That's always important.
Sorry
Yeah, you
about
better watch what you
that.
say now, Dan.
Not, well, I was going to say, not to start all over again. Now, four things I was going to talk about today. That's happening in the freight world here on this side of the peninsula. We have I talked a little bit about, I think it was back in March or to this group on our first final mile. It is our time for our Delaware freight plan. Use of subscription-based analytics. It's something that we always tinker with. So share a little bit on how we've been approaching that and kind of a hot button issue on our UPWP on logistics and fulfillment centers. So our first final mile network, for those maybe that weren't there at the last meeting when we heard just talk about this, it is it's a study we did back in 2021. Most of the data we have was from 2019. Then COVID happened, so using anything for 2019 was probably quite dated. So we were able to do an update of that in kind of new 2025, 2024 world. But the idea of what we're looking for is this kind of how things happen off the beaten path. We all know about our critical urban rural freight corridors, arterials, and interstates. As it gets further, out down to the lower classifications, getting a better handle of what's kind of, truly making those, what are the conditions upon those and how are they relating back to, our freight generating facilities. So, kind of like, there's a lot of different characteristics that we're finding out of a lot of these where they're usually off of obviously a main arterial or interstate. It quickly transitions to, a smaller road, goes through residential areas, which then can lead to, a commercial, industrial, business area. I guess it's easier to relate for some, folks here on this call being in the Baltimore area more, developed that you kind of see where, old sites, whether it's a manufacturing site, where I'm sitting right now, an old car manufacturing site, is seeing, redevelopment. So it was something, now it's turning into something else, which makes it, sometimes a little bit more complicated to chase it. But bottom line, these are segments that generally start carrying a lot of multiple uses. It's not just for trucks. There's vehicles, bicycles, pedestrians. May not have been designed the way it was. So it starts to have a significant amount of conflicts. So our effort in 2021 and this one here was to try to dive into that network a little bit and see one, truly what makes one, an actual, final mile connection. So we really looked at kind of a six-step approach where, looking certainly just, functional classification, and, initial site identification, but using some of the tools at our disposal, being able to, some point-based data on employment, where are the freight intensive sectors that we're looking for? Are they manufacturing, wholesale, transportation, retail, food services, all of those that are generally your, higher intensity, truck dependent industries, where are those concentrations, how those things connect back to, the NHS or critical urban rural freight corridors. Then then start to look more about that routing. How are things, how does it directly connect into it? There was some field reviews once we got to that point of, seeing what the network really truly was. And, so we ended up identifying a network as you see here. Everything in here that's either in green or orange or red on this map is truly what is we made our definition of that. Now, for this report, I think it was a little bit different than the last one. I kind of always said the 2021 report was like, can we get this off the launch pad? We know it can be rather touchy to start to consider or not, look at some of these and say, well, this is a freight route. It's not exactly what we were trying to, get across. It was just a matter of, these are functioning as a final mile connection. So the idea was to, once that was defined, is to what we call it a conflict screening approach, where, we looked at, okay, the conditions along here, are there, we looked at some institutional, types of things about jurisdictions, but more importantly, land use. How does that land? Is there a significant amount of conflicts? Is it, something heavy residential right next to heavy industrial next to residential? There's, that tells us there could be potential conflicts. Different mobility issues, road conditions, safety, all of those things we kind of rolled up into it and went through a screening effort to see where we were kind of hitting on all five of those type of criteria. So that map you see there, low versus high, we call it a screening. It's not a ranking, um, but it helped us set us up for the next step, which was now that we have that, a little bit of some underlying information about each one of those, from the freight perspective, look at these in what we call protect, manage, and accommodate, where, kind of the what are you going to do about it, situation where, some of these are what you call protect, that yes, the freight movement is the priority need in that area. There's maybe not a lot of, conflicts with, other land uses, things like that. So kind of, keeping that open so that there is easy, better, efficient freight access, mobility where you needed to. Then there's what we call manage, where you start looking at it where it serves a little bit of everything, which is probably the most complicated piece of this here, that, that there would have to be some level of, considerations for being able to look at both of those. Now, some of the solutions that we mentioned in the rest of the report is, there are places where you can do truck aprons. There's other things of that nature that you can, put into the infrastructure to make them, be able to peacefully coexist. And then there's accommodate, where it would be a really good idea to probably separate the two, types of activities, freight, and then, regular passenger and pedestrian access. A lot of these come out to be like our smaller little stub routes going in and out of, say, larger shopping centers and things of that nature. So this report kind of wanted to get to that next step of just looking a little bit more at the, what can we do about it, or what should generally be a better framework to have these still in consideration and part of the conversation when there's improvements to be made in these areas. So just before I hop on that, we did just get that approved by our council in September. And I believe at the end you can see the website where you can go ahead and access that. I think I put all that stuff at the end there. So that's been wrapped up, and once anyone wants to take a look at that in the future or have any future questions on it, be glad to answer them. So sliding in the next thing, I'm not sure what Maryland's schedule is for your freight plan update now that it's in, well, as we're all saying right now, it's in the current bill. What the new one's going to look like in the future, who knows? But we're kind of going steady as she goes on the update of the Delaware freight plan. The last time we adopted it was in 2022. So we will have to have one completed, or at least to the feds, as we know right now, in September or October of 2026. So we've just started kicking that off here a little bit. Delaware, we're actually in a nice situation because right now they are updating the statewide rail plan and aviation plan. So we know that we'll be able to, kind of lots of opportunities for sharing information, not duplicating efforts, to be a little bit more efficient on that effort right now. So it has just begun. Here's what, it's literally just here's our little time frame for that. We will have a couple of stakeholder opportunities here in December where we have our winter freight meeting, and then our June summit are probably our two larger ones. But literally hot off the presses from yesterday is they have launched the Delaware Freight Plan website. You can see the link there, and I'm sure many of you will be getting an email at some point to be requesting you to help fill out our stakeholder and public survey that will just literally went live yesterday, and that will be running through mid-October. So a couple things for you to keep in your mind for your freight activities in Maryland. So switching gears a little bit, I mentioned back up in the first final mile stuff about looking at routing, access, and things like that, and what are the tools that can be used for that. We here at WMAPCO, I guess it's been about a year. We're in our fourth year now of having a subscription to Streetlight. So, watching it evolve over the last, couple years, it's something that we've felt more comfortable beginning to use it a little more frequently in some of our efforts. And on the freight side, certainly has become a pretty cool tool to use, but more or less not just, oh, gee whiz, it looks neat. It's coming out with a fair amount of good intel, we're able to gather out of that. So a couple applications that we've used so far. We did use it for our first final mile study when we did some of the work and, kind of digging into it a little bit. You see kind of two directions in which trucks could go. Getting volume data and everything can be, a little timely and costly, or, simply just looking at observations, having people in the field. Well, some things we're able to do is a couple examples here, like say for the Port of Wilmington, things coming off of 295, how many of those trucks actually make it to the Port of Wilmington? We were able to glean some of that out there. Looking at some of the industrial parks, what is the, main, truck flow out of there, getting to say the main interstates to help us a little bit with the routing, instead of us making good guesses, which we're all really, really good at doing, but, we were able to, uh, use this to kind of help, really, really help us give us a better answer on how some of those things are truly flowing from certain locations to, the main part of the, the freight network. We've been using it for, some of you are smaller studies. This is a small arterial road here where, grabbing some of the speed data, you can customize it for periods, seasonal variation, weekday, weekend, things of that nature. So, sometimes in our, like what we call our task one or our information session workshops, we'll bring a lot of these things out, to help with the public and to help make them interactive so people can get a little bit more of a look and feel for, some of the information coming out of those. But back to the freight stuff. One thing that we have done is, to try to take a look at, all of our older studies that we've done. This is, for those who've been around for a while. In the 2003, we did a Wilmington Harrisburg freight study about how trucks are using generally Route 41 from the Port of Wilmington area to Harrisburg. All the counties, Delaware and Maryland, were about to about to have at it and everything about the the traffic. But the idea was like, well, is it all port related? And there were some findings in there, and I think for those who've been around, there was before it was Transearch, it was Reeby and Associates was the steward of that Transearch data set. So going back, in time, the idea is like, well, how does this start to stack up, using some of the more analytical tools that we have here? So we've been putting it through its paces of trying to figure out, of some of these routes here, looking at Delaware and in the smaller corner there, how far do trucks go in PA that originate from Delaware? What are the stronger origin destination patterns? So we were able to, be able to peel through that a bit to figure out, well, how much truly does get to Lancaster? Are there other destinations further away? To really begin to, shape it up a bit. And this one here is just looking directly from the Port of Wilmington, literally from Halsell Avenue. Every truck leaving there, what direction does it go? So we're able to kind of go back, at some of those studies and take a better look-see at that on truly how much makes it to different locations, from the port. You can look at a larger area, the entire city, all of that there. But we've been, trying to hone it a little bit more to see how it can handle, that routing ability and give us some better intel. More importantly, even some of the modeling work that we do. How can this stuff start to look at, county to county flows and seeing how things go from one county to another through trips and whatnot. One thing that we're looking at bringing this into our freight plan right now is some of a larger scale look. Now, what this is looking at all the I-95 Route 1 interchange near the Christiana Mall, everything that accesses Route 1 south from the trucks. Kind of how do they fan out amongst the peninsula here? So what you can see here is, the idea how much is truly through traffic that gets all the way through Delaware, how much branches off on New 301, goes over toward Annapolis. So we're able to look at some of these larger scale, truck movements, which pretty much are starting giving you your basic supply chain study on how different routes are used and what areas are they truly servicing. So the idea is we're going to look at the same flow from, say, the Annapolis, US 50 into the peninsula, looking at things from Pocomoke as well, just to get that idea on how things fan out, within the peninsula, just, basic truck flows now. And the last thing that we're tackling, this is the latest one, that we've gotten our hands on. We haven't even selected the firm yet on this, but we're doing a logistics fulfillment center transportation land use study for Newcastle and Cecil. So pretty much what we're trying to do is, not a surprise to anybody on this call about, the expansion of fulfillment centers and e-commerce. We've heard from our land use agencies about things about the ITE codes and are they truly, is it how right is it? Maybe it's the easiest way to say that. So part of this will be just kind of getting that understanding of the landscape within the region, economic analysis about what are we, kind of looking forward toward the future. But task number three being a traffic assessment, uh, that is something that was, probably the biggest piece of this puzzle is to, kind of look at those ITE codes and do they really match what we're asking, the transportation, the ask is for the land use transportation improvements from the land use agencies, to be able to, are we analyzing that effectiveness as good as we can? And, yeah, is it going to be, how are we going to look at the truck improvements, for those locations. So that's a lot of words on all that stuff, but that's pretty much what we're trying to get at. And to help land use agencies put together a best practices guide for when these come into land use, approval, that they have a better handle on what they're going to be asking for the improvements. And as I mentioned, we're having the interviews this Friday. So it's something that is quite new, and we'll be getting started on that very shortly, probably next week. So yeah, those are the kind of the things that are keeping me busy on the freight side in the Wilmapco region. But if you'd like to, here's a couple links right there that can get you to the freight plan, and our goods movement webpage has all of our material that you want to be accessed, or you can just simply reach out to me and I can get you what you need. So
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it was really good to hear that update on the first and last mile. It looks like we have a question.
yeah, so about the oversized overweight,
Yeah.
I do not know. That is a question. If I'm trying to see if there's anybody here from DelDOT on the call. I have not heard anything, so my initial thought would be probably not, but I can certainly find out from Bruce on that.
Okay. Yeah, if you can follow up on that, that'd be great. Any other questions for Dan?
Can we get a copy of the presentation?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've already given it to Keith.
Yeah,
Okay.
we'll post all those on the BMC website. All the presentations will be posted on there at some point, but if you want it like today, I can send you a copy of that today as well.
Okay, thanks.
But yeah, eventually everything will be posted on the website, on our website. All right, my turn, I think. Let's see.
Okay.
There we go. Does that look like a normal screen now?
Yes, sir, it does.
Okay. Good morning again. So I really wanted to just give everybody a little brief overview of a freight study that we are undertaking here at BMC. We issued a request for proposals back in August, and we just received several of those proposals in on September 17th. So we are currently in the process of reviewing proposals, and we're looking to have a consultant on board and getting started on this project probably late October, by the time we get everything, all the contract information done. So yeah, that's when we plan to get this started. And I'm just going to go through. Of course, everybody knows how freight moves around in Maryland. We have over 32,000 miles of roadways, 10,000 of that being in the Baltimore region. There's 758 miles of rail lines, 530 miles of inland waterways, and 50,000 feet of air cargo runways. Most of the freight is transported by truck in Maryland, as you all know. 84% of that, of the freight weight is moved by truck, and 98% of it, of the values moved by truck. And of course, the big truck routes include I-81, I-83, and I-95, and most of the I-95 corridor is the northern parts of Maryland. So the purpose of this freight study that we're undertaking here at BMC is we have 4 different tasks associated with this project, and I'll talk more about those tasks individually here in a second. But just to give you a quick overview of what those tasks are, the first is going to be looking at some of the truck parking issues that we have, and I know there's been 1,000 different studies on truck parking and 1,000 different concepts developed for them, but what's one more? It's not going to hurt. So we think we can tackle some of the problems and maybe come up with some unique solutions here. The second task will be to find out what other MPOs are doing as far as freight initiatives and best practices. Then the third task will be to look at the regional impacts from the completion of the Howard Street Tunnel and the expansion of the Sparrows Point Container Terminal. And finally, the fourth task will be asking our consultant to provide some details on how we might be able to put together a Baltimore Freight Finder, and that would be similar to the Philly Freight Finder. And if any of you guys have been on these calls for a while, probably about a year ago, we had a presentation from DVCRP, whatever, Delaware Regional Planning Commission. There we go. We had them give a presentation on the Philly Freight Finder, and we thought that was something that would be good for us to have here in the Baltimore region. So the first task, again, I said we're going to go through these individually. We're going to be looking at truck parking, and we're going to utilize a lot of existing information, but especially the 2020 Maryland statewide truck parking study. We'll be getting our consultant to collaborate with the state and local freight people, freight partners. They'll be conducting interviews and helping us to identify some issues and some solutions. That'll all culminate with a technical memorandum that'll include a variety of different capacity projects and informational projects. So as far as the capacity projects, we'll be looking at some of the existing parking facilities and utilizing state-owned properties. We'll be looking at where we could possibly put new facilities, and we'll be developing for each of those scenarios 3 different schematics and cost estimates. So they're going to do kind of a high overview of where we could put additional parking and give us some cost estimates on how much it would cost to provide that additional parking. And we'll also be looking at them, looking for our consultants to give us some innovative solutions. And I don't know what those might be, whether it's utilizing big box store type parking lots or stadium parking lots or whatever they may come up with. And then they're going to give us some pros and cons for each of those scenarios. As far as informational improvements, we're going to get our consultants to talk about how we can improve access to freight information and talk about private truck parking facilities as well, the ITS applications of truck parking at the private facilities. The next part of our study will be just an overview of what best practices are at other MPOs. So we'll be conducting interviews with similar sized MPOs. We're not going to, the smaller ones have their issues, the larger ones have their issues, but we want to kind of focus in on MPOs that are of similar size to ours here in the Baltimore region. And some of the examples, I'm not going to read all of these, but there's some of the things that we want to find out what they're doing in the other areas include truck parking, their freight plans, performance measures, things like that. And again, that will all culminate in a technical memorandum outlining all the information that they came up with during the interviews. This is a big one that we wanted to really tackle too, because we know with the completion of the Howard Street Tunnel and the planned Sparrows Point Container Terminal expansion, there's going to be a lot of changes to the truck patterns. So we're going to get our consultant to, again, develop another technical memorandum, which will outline the changes in the truck patterns, not just the truck patterns, but auto traffic, how that's affected by the Sparrows Point Container Terminal expansion as well. But we'll be looking at, how the truck speeds, road capacities, and safety are all affected by these two different improvements that are being made. And we also want to look at what the impacts to the neighboring communities are going to be, since there could be a lot more containers going on trains. Will that affect how many trucks are actually traveling through the neighborhoods? So does that affect air quality and noise, things like that? And then as a result of all that research, we're going to get our consultants to recommend some potential regional infrastructure improvements. And then I touched on this during the introduction of the study, but the Baltimore Freight Finder is another thing that we want our consultants to kind of give us some detailed analysis on what it'll take to develop a regional freight locator tool such as the Philly Freight Finder. The intention is for it to be an online interactive freight sharing network and expand the reach of freight planning efforts for all our freight partners, including regional planners, economic developers, and the general public. It could even benefit the trucking community. It's just going to help us with data sharing, and it'll support the local and state planners searching for knowledge on freight around the region. So that's kind of the overview of the freight study. And if there's any questions on that, like I said, we'll be working to select a consultant, have them on board to start all this work in October. So probably maybe 6 months, maybe two freight movement task force meetings from now, we'll be able to provide another update on some of the information that we've discovered through this study. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to take them for you. I'm going to stop sharing, and hopefully Jason is here by now. And he is. So are there any questions on that study? Yay, no questions. I always like no questions. All right, with that, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Jason from Maryland Transportation Authority, and he's going to give us an update on the Francis Scott Key Bridge. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to say, where we started, where we are, where we're going. Hopefully that's all included in this. So Jason, I'm going to go ahead and let you take over.
Thanks, Keith. I appreciate it. All right, is everybody able to see the PowerPoint?
Not yet.
All right.
Oh, it's popping up.
We're a Teams organization, so the Zoom is a little bit different. How about now?
Yep.
Great. Yeah,
I would like to say hello to, this is Melissa Bogdan from the MDTA. I'm community relations and help with all the outreach and stakeholder support. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having it. It really is an exciting time for the Key Bridge rebuild as we have demolition underway and we're starting some of our more substantial, either pre-construction activities or advanced work before we start the rebuild in earnest later on this year. So we're going to, as Keith sort of alluded to, we're going to talk about sort of where we've been, where we plan to go, and talk about what some of the key elements of the bridge replacement project is going to include. So we'll run through some of the background, talk about the bridge design, reconstruction activities, our ongoing initiatives, our engagement programs, and then answer any questions that the group may have. It's been about 18 months now since the Dolly collision with the bridge and the tragedy that happened there. We were able to work through the summer of 2024 to give closure to the families and clear the channel to traffic, and then work to support impacted workers and businesses in and around the port area through legislation through the General Assembly last year. Really the last year here at MDTA has been focused on rebuilding the Key Bridge. With that and with anything when it comes to government, we've went on a contracting blitz in 2024 and 2025, where we secured 4 separate contracts. One to work with our construction partner that had just built the Nice Middleton Bridge down in Southern Maryland to help with that debris removal and that emergency procurement, which rolled into a progressive design build procurement in the middle of last year, which were then followed on by 2 separate sort of staff and manpower augmentation contracts for both our general engineering consultant and our construction management and inspection staff augmentation, which happened in the summer of last year. All this occurring at the same time as we were working through the NEPA process, getting our categorical exclusion approved in July of last year as we worked through the emergency response program. So that was all happening sort of concurrently, and we ended up with the selection of a progressive design builder that is the team fronted by Kiewit Construction. And as I said, we've been at it with Kiewit for just about a little over a year. And we can see with the fall 2024, really that design beginning and moving into the winter of last year, where we started to do a large amount of field work, geotechnical investigation, surveys, bathymetry, utility designation, everything you would need to sort of start the base foundation of your project, working through processing and analyzing that field data earlier this year. That has then led us to the demo contract the demo work that we awarded earlier this summer, and then hopefully starting construction later on this fall. So with the emergency response program and with some of the guardrails that are set up through that program, we're able to replace, with the support of the federal government, what was lost in the elision. So what that essentially means is that we are able to put back a bridge and have the federal government participate in the funding of that replacement project. But the bridge has to be essentially the same as what the bridge originally was, which means that it is 2 lanes in either direction, although we're able to take those core elements of the bridge and bring it up to modern standards and account for some of the growth and changes at the port, both now and in the future. So we have a couple visuals here that I'm sure everybody's seen at this point about how we anticipate the bridge to look as it sort of crosses over the federal channel here on the way into Baltimore. Some high-level facts about the bridge. The previous bridge was 180 feet, had a 185-foot air gap, and we will have a 230-foot or more air gap to allow for future port expansion. The bridge, as a result of it getting taller, is also getting longer. With the cable-stayed design of the new bridge, that's necessitated the main bridge towers becoming much, much taller. So they're going to be over 600 feet tall once they reach their maximum height, which again allows us to push back those 2 main pylons to being over 1,600 feet on either, or 800 feet on either side of the federal channel center line, which is about 400 feet more than the previous bridge. And again, just as the main section gets wider, so does the entire bridge length. So the bridge will be over 3,300 feet as well. Pre-construction activities, we sort of touched on this at the start as well. We've had a pretty extensive geotechnical investigation program, both on land as well as in the water. We started that program earlier this year, ran through the investigation. As a result of some of those investigations, we ended up making some design decisions that will go into a little more detail a little later on. But this allowed us to keep the project progressing forward and take into account some of the geotechnical data that we were able to glean from the process. So any bridge of this size or scale is required to do specific wind tunnel testing, which we're doing with a company called RWDI outside of Toronto, Canada. They work to build different elements of the bridge as well as a 1 in 20 scale model where they have a wind tunnel and they test the different elements in order to ensure that there's no eccentricities or any sort of amplification issues as in order to make informed design adjustments to address any potential field issues as a result of building this bridge that is going to be quite tall and it will be a unique element in Maryland. So along with this, they also break down the bridge into different construction phases as well. So we get to test the bridge at every stage of construction to ensure all those major milestones will be accounted for and we'll be able to progress the construction without any unanticipated stoppage. With this as well, and due to the size of our foundations, accompanied with our vessel protection, this has led to special modeling being done with the Turner Fairbanks Research Lab down in Fairfax. So we're partnering with Federal Highway on this, where they are actually doing specific modeling in order to test the scour conditions at our pylon and main span piers. We have 8-foot steel pipe piles that we'll be installing for all of our main structural elements. And this is sort of beyond some of the key or standard inputs that we have in the research. So Turner Fairbanks within Federal Highway is doing project-specific research, and we're about wrapping that up, and we're seeing good results as far as the actual modeled scour versus what we had predicted and what we had assumed in design. So again, it's more ensuring that our conservative assumptions that were made during initial design development are validated and we're able to move forward without any delay. We mentioned the test pile program. The test pile program allows us to sort of field test our foundation assumptions. These are pile that are being fabricated. I think these are actually up in the harbor now, or in the Patapsco now. But these are 220-foot long, 8-foot steel pipe piles that will be the main foundation of the bridge towers. And the test pile program allows us to test the axial load capacity of those 8-foot piles, as well as do a lateral test to see how much side force or side resistance they would provide as well, which again provides various inputs into the design. We've made assumptions, and this allows us to kind of get a proof of concept with the initial 12 piles on the project. And we anticipate this starting and our first pile driving to happen within a week from today, either likely later this weekend or maybe sometime early next week, depending on the weather. Sort of concurrent with this, we are working through demolishing the bridge deck and the land-based portions of the bridge. That started in early July and is going to continue over several months. We're at the point where we've removed all of the median barrier, the bridge parapets, and have taken off the entirety of the deck on the southern portion of the bridge. And we're working our way to remove the deck on the northern portion of the bridge. And then following that, we're going to start picking the steel off of the remaining portions of the bridge and get it down to a couple feet below the finished grade. So that will continue into Q1, Q2 of 2026. So I sort of alluded to this earlier, with the geotechnical investigations and our field investigations, we were able to identify some pretty substantial potential conflicts with our original bridge alignment. The original categorical exclusion had language requiring us to be on center line of the existing bridge. And through that investigation and through some design adjustments, we shifted the main span portions of the bridge without really changing any of the geometry or key design elements of the bridge itself, and modified the approaches in order to avoid those obstructions, which would have added cost and added additional delay. So this allows us to maintain schedule, and we were able to make this sort of swift adjustment without any real schedule impacts. This revised alignment remains within MDTA right away, and I think that most folks who end up using the bridge, it'll be an imperceptible difference. There's just an additional curve as you're coming across the northern peninsula. So ongoing initiatives with the project, and with there being substantial work within the Patapsco and within the approach to the harbor, we're going to have a lot of construction crews and equipment and various ancillary elements that will be in the waterway. So, one of the reasons, or one of the benefits of speaking to groups like this, is that we want to get out the word that we need to treat the waterway like an active construction zone, and do what we can whenever we're piloting vessels or using whatever pleasure craft to minimize the wakes that we're creating, because wakes create dangerous conditions for workers. So with that, we have a Smooth Waters initiative that's underway to try and get that word out as well through local marinas and like hobbyist groups. But again, we want to reinforce that here as well. So with that, we've worked with the Coast Guard and the Army Corps in order to establish safety zones and speed limit zones in and around the work site. So we have specified no entry areas that are directly adjacent to the construction work. And then we have a 6 knot no wake zone that extends about 1,000 feet beyond that. Ultimately, the federal channel is outside of any of these restrictions, and the main shipping traffic into and out of the harbor remains largely unimpacted by the work that's happening now. So again, we have our webpage, keybridgerebuild.com, has lots of information on it. We're also undergoing a refresh, so we encourage you to look there both now and in the future, where we have lots of fact sheets and partner progress information about the activities that we have going on now, including demolition, noise and vibration monitoring, the changes that you're going to see, and how to get in touch with us in the future if you wanted us to come out and speak to any of your HOAs or other industry groups. We're always happy to come out and engage. Speaking of that, ultimately, this group and Melissa's group has been working to engage with the public, listen, try and get as many connections as we can, because ultimately we want to make sure that people are aware of the project, are aware of what's coming up, and aware of where we're going. So with that, we attend pop-up events throughout the year. So again, if you are looking for any attendance at a community meeting, a community event, anything like that, we're always happy to attend and try and spread the word about the Key Bridge Rebuild as well. Melissa, do you have anything you want to say about outreach or engagement? All right.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I just put in the chat the Key Bridge Rebuild website. We have launched a new text alert program starting this month. So if you go to the website, you can sign up to get, major project updates through the text alerts or through our email system, as well as the Facebook page has a lot of content that has been drawing lots of good interest and comments. As well, we are available for any community events, or if your organization would like a presentation as well, please feel free to email us to request that. That's all I have.
All right. Thank you, Melissa. So Keith, I'm happy to open the floor to any questions if anybody in the group wants to ask any questions or have any follow-ups regarding what we presented.
Yeah, Jason, thank you very much for that pretty informative presentation. I personally do have a question. I was at the County Engineers Association conference last week, and they had a presentation. It was by the demolition crews or the debris removing crews that were originally there. And they had 3 of them at that time. Are you just using one at this point? And I know it's one of the ones that was at the one of those original 3, but are you just using the one now? Or...
So with the original salvage, there was sort of a jurisdictional distinction with the responsibilities that were assigned to the ship owner, the responsibilities that the Army Corps was taking care of within the federal channel, and then basically everything else, which became MDTA's responsibility. So we had those 3 contractors, and I think it was resolved with the ship owner, Don Juan with the Corps, and then we had Skanska and McLean helping with our portion. So with the work that's happening now, we're contracted directly with Kiewit Infrastructure, and they've actually subbed out the demolition work to a company called Sessler Wrecking, which is based out of New York, but they're a specific company who does demolition like this.
Okay,
and
so none of the original 3 are involved with it now then?
No, but
Okay.
but they're making very strong progress, and we hope that they finish faster than what they had anticipated.
Thank you. Yeah, it was Skanska, I think, that gave the presentation. Any other questions from anybody?
Yeah, Keith, I have a question. Armand at MMTA. Jason, great presentation. Thank you very much for attending today. A few slides back, I believe you were talking about your piling testing. You used a term called scouring. That's not a term I'm familiar with. Could you describe that briefly, please?
Sure. So we, scour is sort of it's the result of water moving across soil and interacting with the man-made or the man implemented obstacles within the natural channel. So with any sort of pier or abutment that's associated with a bridge, as part of the design process, you would have to evaluate how much of the existing soil would be removed and deposited downstream as a result of that new obstruction being in place. So essentially what it means is that we would anticipate that some level of soil deposition would happen and adjust our structural design in order to account for that. Just because this is a unique bridge, we're actually building these scale models, whereas typically you would just go to a design guideline and be able to calculate what your anticipated scour would be. But ultimately, the goal is to design a project that accommodates the scour that's anticipated to occur.
Thanks, Jason. Tina, you want to ask your question?
Good morning. Thank you. Great presentation. I'm just wondering, at this stage in design, has there been any discussions on thresholds or limitations for oversized, overweight vehicles? Or does that come in a later stage?
So I can follow up on that. I know that there are groups that do specific analysis for what sort of the typical weight limit on the bridge would be. But and Tina, I can follow up with more specific details on that.
All right, appreciate it. And including height, width, length, you know,
Yep.
those type of things as well. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tina. Any other questions? No? All right. Well, thanks, Jason and Melissa, I should say. Appreciate you guys giving us an update on where we stand and where we're heading. I think that's all the presentations we have. Is there anybody else that wants to discuss anything or let us know what's going on? Or JT, looks like your hand's up, maybe? Or are you just stretching?
Saying hello. Hey, Keith.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Couple things. I put in the chat box that the state freight plan is going to be updated generally in the same time schedule of Delaware's. So we're going to kick off this fall. Most likely Aviva Clue here and the Office of Planning and Secretary's Office will lead that effort with some assistance from some state highway contracts. So stay tuned for that. Also, the State Freight Summit, because of some change in speakers at the last minute, has shifted from October 9th to December 8th. So that actually allows us to get some speakers that we wanted for October to actually participate. So we're pretty excited about that. So stay tuned. If there's anybody on this call that doesn't have that invite that's interested in participating at the MDOT headquarters in Hanover, let me know or Keith know, and we can forward you that invite. That's it for today.
Okay. All right. Thanks, JT. Anybody else? Hearing no other updates, then our next meeting will be scheduled for December 17th. Same time as this meeting at 10 o'clock. And it looks like that's all we got. So you guys are all going to get just about a half an hour of your time back. Appreciate all you guys for attending, and especially Jason and Dan for their presentations. And that's all I got. So thank you, everybody.